one of the recurring things that I see, in this whole, America isn't great. We'll just call this. By the way, thanks everybody in the chat room for sticking with me for a couple more minutes. If you got to go, I totally understand. Yes, we have a Patreon. It's patreon.com/HalSparks. We have that you can donate on the page. It certainly helps buy things like microphones and all that kind of stuff, and road gear when I'm traveling around and all that. I want to make abundantly clear about something because you hear this a lot, and it's largely from both people who view themselves as hardcore liberal or progressive, some people, I guess, who view themselves as anarchists, and certainly a certain number of Trump supporters and right wingers who believe that America is only great in fits and starts. And on in the far fringy left, the idea that America was never great, and that it won't be until we get it together to where everything is perfect. And to me, I have my own personal feeling on this is that the promise of America, the Constitution, the idea it was founded on, and free speech, and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that everyone was created equal, even as awkwardly and legally confusing as it started out to be, wavering through there, including, up to and including and through the Civil War and other areas. It is the promise of America and the principles on which the country was founded that make it great and important. And so from a progressive and liberal standpoint, this idea that somehow we will say that America isn't great, I find patently offensive, if you want to, and to some degree cruel to the idea that that the country stands for. Effectively, in saying that, you're saying that there is nothing special about being able to worship the religion of your choice, or being able to have freedom of speech, and all the the ironic things that far right argue about the value of, that violates the Constitution when the other side does it, or that or that is an attack on freedom because those people have a right to do something I don't want them to be able to do. That this absurdity, how people play with the principles themselves, does not undermine that part of it. There's a little blues for you for a second. And Mary, people in our chat room bring up things like slavery and those kind of things. Those are failings of the country. But ultimately, we fought a civil war over slavery. We were one of the first countries to get rid of it in the world. It still exists in countries in the world. And we got rid of it. As much as it is a mark on our collective history, it is also a value because we went through that. There are quite a few countries, quite frankly, that dropped slavery because they saw the damage the fight did to us. I think that what makes America great is the principles on which we stand, and the carrier, the fact that the constitutional protections that are given to us that were unique in the world when when they came into being, and have spread, and in some ways there are other countries that do certain parts of it better than us, and other countries where arguably they don't. I completely agree. Northern European, Canadian countries can be an improvement on how we do things, especially things like healthcare. But I also disagree with how England treats speech in some ways. In their desire to eradicate certain types of speech, they put curtails on it that I think are too easily abused. And I think the freedom of speech includes all the freedom to say stuff that I disagree with or I find awful, because that's an intrinsic part of it. And again, all these things, that we kind of take for granted as a country are not even in and of themselves the values that you have to import directly, but they are the carriers by which those values exist. They are the delivery system. Freedom of speech in and of itself is not actually the value. Freedom of speech allows you to express. It's super important that we understand that before we start curtailing it. Now, that being said, do I think there should be no social ramifications for saying stuff? No. And do I think when Bill O'Reilly is complaining that his freedom of speech is being violated because people call him out as a bully or a dick, is freedom of speech is childish, silly. That's exactly how it works here. Both sides being important. The people decrying the marches as if, president's already been elected, you guys need to get used to it. This is your president now. As if both parts, the election process and the response to it, is not a valuable and important part of our democracy. So to me, and people can, you can put in the comments below whether you feel this way or not, but I have a pretty violent response emotionally to people who say the country isn't great or hasn't ever, and it's funny that Frederick Douglass would come up in this pathetic lash about by the Trump administration, and Trump himself, to appear inclusive and wise when and caring and understanding, that ultimately, Douglass is one of the great things about this country, the existence of Frederick Douglass. And you can argue that if he hadn't had to have lived the life he lived, and if he, and if that challenge hadn't existed, he would have been as valuable to the growth of human life as anybody who's in the world who's been representative of a challenge. Gandhi, Martin Luther King, to one of my heroes, Muhammad Ali. The challenges that they went through to some degree are what makes them. It doesn't excuse the damage they experienced, but it is part of the process. Them extraordinary and beautiful and important, and lessons for us all. And there's some idea, I guess, now that you get to skip history. That in the creation of a country or the creation of a way that you can just kind of tweet your way past the lessons and the difficulty of learning those lessons and the culture as easily as the stroke of a pen. And that doesn't happen for any group. And I think it's important that when we talk about the value of diversity in our country, when we talk about the value of method and experience and culture and religion, that we understand that what is great about America is the fact that that discussion, even when it's an argument, can happen here. And there's have to forgive everything that's been done in the name of America, lest you allow things that have been, crimes committed by people who've been in charge at different points. That by letting, those people define what America is, you tacitly throw the baby out with the bathwater in terms of the value of democratic society, and at some point are just clamoring for some form of secondary authoritarianism. You just want somebody to come in that's on your side to run things, and only for people who believe that, democracy is a lot more messy than that. It is a relationship. And relationships grow strained and difficult, often right before they are found to be the most valuable relationship in your life. And that is true of race relations. That is true of the difficulties going on with people in the LGBT community and their detractors and the people on the right who can't see past their own bigotry. The only way that they're going to is if this conversation continues back and forth, and we take it seriously. You know, and again, decrying that somehow America never was great, or that slavery or Jim Crow make it so that the United States wasn't great, when the removal of those things are upon a good many Americans. And a good many Americans, as much as there's the irony that there's so much Southern pride about the failed pro-slavery, states in the South, that there's not been an equal amount of the ally pride of the Northern families that fought just as vehemently and strongly, if not more so, to end slavery. It's important to recognize that our heritage is not wholly the sum of our flaws any more than it is wholly the sum of our victories. This idea that America does no wrong is as flawed as this America has done no right. And ultimately, it is the Constitution itself, the Bill of Rights, the laws we put in place in this country to protect people that other countries do not, that make us great. However slapdash and however weakly we deal with that responsibility, the fact that we have taken it on is what makes this country great. And I take great offense at people like Donald Trump saying that it was great once and it will be again. It never stops being great, even when it's going through the growing pains. And the very fact that people can march and show what they believe and hold up whatever signs they want and stand wherever they want and storm the Capitol and airports and make this it is an intrinsic part of what makes this country great all the time. And that's what must be protected. Once you write off that, you say America was never great, or it's always great, you cut off the very necessary elements of debate, conscience, legislation, and the intellectual and emotional connection that people need to have while they disagree. You can't make fun of Trump's wall by putting a wall between you and your enemies. The mocking of Trump's wall truly requires reaching out to you to some degree despise. Now, I will say this as one caveat. Whenever I engage or I am in a situation where I'm engaging people who I would consider to have vile views, that believe genuinely racist and bigoted and prejudiced things, that they seem who seem in control of those thoughts, who have thought them through and decided it is in their self-interest to maintain and carry those thoughts. And I know, speaking to this person, that even facts will not shift that for them. Then the value of my arguing with them gets even higher, because there are people to their left and to their right in their circle of friends, in their circle of influence, that may not buy it all the time. Every true in their audience and their congregation and their group, that when they hit one of these hardline points, has a flinch moment and goes, I think I think you're being too prideful about that thought, and I don't agree with you. I agree with you in general, but I can't just let it slide, all the time. Those people are reaching. Those people you can have a conversation with, and while they may never agree totally with you on things, as a progressive, as a liberal, I feel the responsibility to speak to them with a clarity and a dignity that is protections of the Constitution that were granted to me in the first place to be able to carry out the conversation. Now, am I completely comfortable on Twitter and other places mocking someone and having a back and forth, and going toe to toe with someone as far as verbally? Absolutely, and I have no issue with that. But at no point will I try to find a point of ingratiation, because I'm not sure. My goal is never to root out the enemy that I suspect is within, but to recognize the possible, and it is not easy. But the complication, the difficulty of it, is the glorious part of Old Glory. It is the values that are within the protective nature of the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and the extraordinary nature of the Equal Protection Clause, and the extraordinary nature of free speech and freedom of religion, that went into it was created, were extraordinary and continue to be so. And so it's our goal when we, whenever people have a question about how America is doing stuff, or whether it's, doing certain things that are below its mission statement, its core values, we seek to correct them, but never question the fact that our ability to question those things, our ability to correct those things within the context of a democratic society with free speech and the freedom to travel across state lines without having to show papers, to interact with people of like mind within, peacefully. The value of that never diminishes and is always. So there you go. I felt the need to say that because I kept seeing a bunch of this backlash. I will not let this slapdash garbage presidency and these bumper sticker mentalities on the part of Trump supporters, and this weird protection racket of certain progressives and liberals diminish that fact. I will not let you take that from me. You do not get to take that from me. So I like just a sounding off of values, so people know what I'm about and what to expect. And to me, the fact that you guys show up in the chat when I'm doing the show and engage, even when I say we go outside the in our discourse, I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And I just wanted to say overall, just thank you guys for being there and engaging in this conversation, because it speaks volumes to some of those beliefs that you that the freedoms we oftentimes take for granted in a democratic society cannot be co-opted by people who are not good shepherds of them, and that in taking ownership of those beliefs, I am by no means diminishing past historical mistakes or damage done by people who have run this country at different points in history. And by doing that, I'm not letting them own what the charter, the notion, the ideas, the principles of America are. I will not. And you know, and as much as I have my issues with conservative thought, and we will hash them out again and again, and I will use very strong language from time to time based on my passion. I will never question their humanity. Libertarians are dicks. Never remove and don't believe that what they talk about is a political discussion at all. Not let them not be part of the conversation. That's it. And so I appreciate you guys. I really do. Take an extra minute. I don't know that I do it often enough. So anyways, that being said, thank you guys so much for joining me. We'll see you next time. And I just want you to think about that over the course of the next, week or so, when all this, when this Trump nonsense rolls forward, that it will help you keep your wits during this part of it, because that's what we need. There was an article I saw, and I don't want to get on a second tangent, but there was an article I saw about how we need to be afraid of Trump. You must be afraid of Trump. Fear Trump and what he's going to do. And what he meant was, don't get lulled into a false sense of security and forget about it. You got to stay vigilant. What he meant was vigilant. But what he used, the word he used was afraid, fear. And no one operates well from a thought of fear or worry. You do not have all of your skills as a human being when you are consumed with fear or worry. So, be concerned, be aware, be focused, but use every tool at your disposal. Don't let these people junk America because of a bone they have to pick or their own personal issues. They don't get to define the value of this country. This country is great because of what it stands for and where it's going, as ugly as that process can be at times. You guys are awesome. We'll see you next time. This is the House Parks Radio program.